You're watching The Conversation with Tim McKain, where I interview community leaders, community builders, activists, and world changers. My aim is to inspire others through through successful people's personal journeys and achievements. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Bryon D. Turman, who not only is a professor at the historical Black College University, North Carolina A&T. He also is an esteemed journalist who has written articles for hip hop. It was, allhiphop.com and Respect My Hood, to name a few. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing just fine, man. Doing just fine. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So when did you first fall in love with hip hop?
Man, it's a long time, brother. Shoot, man, I like to say, man, I've been in love with hip hop since hip hop hit the radio. I could date it rappers like 1979, man, but I'd already got a hold to Funky 4 Plus One More and Cold Crush Brothers, some other cats, man. Even though I'm from North Carolina, born and bred in Statesville, had friends, man, who used to go up to New York, man, come back with the cassette tapes, and I've been a hip hop head ever since, man. But I think, man, if I had to point to a particular moment, I probably would say, man, Eric B. and Rakim's My Melody off the Paid in Full album. I distinctly remember hearing that. God, one of my friends, neighborhood friends, actually older than me, but he had a boom box and he walked by my housing project unit and he was playing My Melody, man. They had this whistle on there at the beginning. And I remember following him down to the basketball court, like on some Pied Piper stuff. And was like, yo, man, what's that? He was like, man, it's this new Eric B. and Rakim. And I would say if I had to date it, that would be it, man. But I had been through the breakdancing stage and graffiti and, a couple other elements of the art, man, before that, man. Even, like I said, man, in Western North Carolina, man, culture spread so quick, man, even before we had internet and social media and all the other stuff. So, man, I've been a hip-hop head, man, since easy, man, 84, 85.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So you say you traveled. So you were born in North Carolina, Statesville, North Carolina, but you also traveled to New York. What were some of the differences between early New York rap and early North Carolina rap? And a lot of people don't know the history of North Carolina rap, so I want you to educate us on the history of North Carolina rap as well.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, man. Well, if you look at it, man, like early North Carolina rap, man. Pretty much early all rap outside of New York try to mimic New York. So if you go back, man, listen to cats like the Busy Boys, man, who are a group from here in Greensboro, North Carolina, man, way back in the late 80s. One of my friends was a producer, DJ in the group, man, called the Rhythm Fanatic. Went on to produce records, man, for Lil Kim. He did Crush on You Beat, did some joints for Michael Jackson, man, did a Destiny Child joint. So him, man, those guys, man, they pretty much set the scene here in Greensboro, man, but then the clubs. North Carolina hip hop, man, pretty much started from the clubs, man. I remember when I first came to Greensboro, man, it used to be this joint MC Square over there, right across the street from, I think it's Smith Homes. And that's where hip hop lived. College radio, we got it there, man. So for me, man, it would go back to the Busy Boys. Man, back had a store here in Greensboro called New York Sound, which was very instrumental in making sure that cats got a hold to music at a time when you still went to record stores and bought cassettes and vinyl. So yeah, man, I think North Carolina hip hop, man, like everybody else, tried to mimic New York. Then, by the time we started creating our own sound, man, even with the successes of folk like P.D. Pablo, you go through Lil Brother with Ninth Wonder, Fontaine, the rapper Big Pooh, their work, man, clearly J. Cole, Rhapsody, who's doing some tremendous work right now. And a lot of North Carolina had this crazy like mixture, man. We're Mid-Atlantic state. So we were, we had like 1 foot in the deep South and 1 foot in the urban, kind of vibe, man, that we were hearing from New York, man. So you didn't get a lot of funky soul from here, man. You got, James Brown break beats, man. You had, the Funk Brothers, Jamaica Funk, man. I remember, I think their brother was from, lived in Winston-Salem for some time. So you had, North Carolina has a very rich history in music in general. And I think that once we started getting a hold of hip hop, man, in the late 80s, which is relatively early in the game.
Absolutely.
And North Carolina A&T State University, man, the radio station there, 90.1, has, man, since I've been in Greensboro, man, almost 30 years now, over 30 years now, has been a real beacon of North Carolina hip hop, man. It used to be a show called the Midnight Hour. The Texas Pete the Hot One was the DJ's name. And from at midnight on Friday and Saturday nights, man, from like midnight until whenever they turned them off, they would play, man, hip hop that you wouldn't hear back then. There was no hip hop radio. I distinctly remember when 102 Jams, which is the local hip hop radio station now, came on the air and played Jam on it for like, I don't know, a month or 2 weeks straight. It was crazy. But you used to access hip hop, man, through college radio. But North Carolina has a very rich history, man. David Willis, who was a student at North Carolina A&T at the time, man, went on to produce a couple of joints on Reasonable Doubts for Jay-Z. So we've been North Carolina has had a foot in the music industry, man, for a very long time, man. And hip hop is no different.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So you mentioned something about the vinyls and the cassettes. That's old school. So when I hear a lot of elders in our community, they talk about like the vinyl sound and how it's like got a different sound than today's music when it comes to just the radio and everything like that. Do you notice, as someone who was a part of two eras of hip hop and music, two eras, can you hear the difference in sound between the two?
Oh, absolutely, man. I think anybody that heard vinyl will hear that difference. There's a grittiness to it, man. For lack of a better terms, maybe a realness to it. The music seems to reverberate a little bit more, man. You can hear, the strings on the guitar being plucked. I think with the digital recording equipment now, man, it's been so sterilized in terms of what they can do in the studio nowadays, man, to take out any background noise, man. Used to be this guy, where he's still alive, man. Marty Marl, of the Juice Crew, called himself Dusty Marl because he used to keep that the sound that you hear on a record. He wanted to keep that in his recording in the studio. We've long gone past that, man. But hip hop, man, is the most technological music genre that's ever been created, man. Anytime new technology gets involved, hip hop jumps on it, man. So if it's wiring two turntables together, man, to do a park jam, man, with Herkin and Boys back in the 70s, or auto-tune or MP3 players or whatever it is, man, hip hop has always been on the cutting edge of working with technology, man. So the vinyl has this very crisp, gritty, a real sound, man. It sounds like real instruments. And I think that's one of the things, man, that people like right now with the retro era in music that we have now, man, folk are going back to vinyl, and some vinyl records are selling for $100, $200 just because they're so hard to find right now. But there's a very distinct sound of vinyl, and if you've heard it, you know what I'm talking about. I remember when I heard a CD for the first time, and the sound punched. It was a lot louder. It punched, but there was something that was missing. Obviously, you get used to it, but I know even when I hear vinyl records now, man, that just the sound of the needle touching the groove on a vinyl disc, it just gives it that grittiness, man, that I really like, and particularly with hip hop. I think hip hop was not meant to be. It's meant to be played on whatever you can play it on, but that's where the original hip hop came from, vinyl records. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So you mentioned how you had a breakdancing background. Did you ever? Were you ever a rapper? Did you ever have any inspirations to be a rapper?
Yeah, I'm sure, man. Like anybody my age, there's probably a crusty cassette tape running around here somewhere with me trying to rap on it. Probably having some fun with my friends, but I never really, man, I've always been too respectful of the art. I think that's one of the things that is perhaps missing right now. I've always been too respectful of the artists, man, to just jump on a mic and try something. I've always, man, enjoyed the music, man. Much of my scholarship work goes with looking at the music from an academic lens, but I'm not an MC, man. And when I was breakdancing, man, I mean, it wasn't much of a crew, man. 5 or 6 of us in Statesville, man, spinning around on cardboard that we could find, and still linoleum out of houses that were being built, or project units that were being built, stuff like that, man. But yeah, man, I think everybody, that's just part of being a hip hop head. Everybody tries it at least once, man. I think everybody who's a hip hop head has tried to DJ a little bit, or at least, owned a bunch of records or music. I think they've all, breakdanced a little bit, rapped a little bit, probably spray painted something from time to time. I think, that's just part of it for me. But I've always just been like any other art. I know I'm not Pablo Picasso. I can draw a stick figure, but I'm not trying to sell no art, no museum. I'm not Basquiat. But I feel the same way about rappers as well, man. Those that really take a hold of the art form.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How did music help you transition to become an educator?
I tell you, connections. For me, my degrees are in African American literature. So I approach hip hop as an extension of Black literature, of Black storytelling. That's how I look at it, man. In terms of the lyrics, if you think about it, any event that's happened in the world, not just in the last 40 years that hip hop has been recorded, but even before, there's been a rap verse about it. If it's Marcus Garvey, Malcolm, Dr. King, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, slavery, Reconstruction, World War I, World War II, you name it, there's been a hip hop verse about it. And so for me, I look at hip hop as an extension of Black storytelling. I was already an educator. I've been teaching somebody something since 1995. And there was an open call for new classes to be developed at A&T, where I currently work. And I said, well, I had some friends, man, who are up in Philly. One of my boys was working on his PhD. Shout out to Dr. Will Boone, Winston State, North Carolina. Winston State University. Boone was working on his PhD up at Temple. I went up there to visit him one time. He happened to be on a panel. The guy who was leading the panel was a friend of his who was a professor at Lehigh University, Dr. James Peterson. He was talking about he had his class that was hip hop class. It just so happened when I came back to campus, there was this open call for new classes, and I said, let's try hip hop class. Had never developed a new class before. And once I got into the throes of doing it, man, I was really supported by my department, sold them on the fact that, like I was telling you, that we're going to look at hip hop as an extension of Black storytelling. I'm going to look at it as the literary aspects of it. And it worked, man. Students flocked to the class, man. I've been, doing that ever since now 2007.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So how does your English class correlate with hip hop?
Literature. We look at it as a storytelling. And if you think about it, man, perhaps the easiest example of that is Slick Rick's a children's story. And if you look at Slick Rick's a children's story, not only is it called a children's story, but the rhyme opens up once upon a time, not long ago. And he goes on to give you plot. There's a climax, there's a rise of action, a fall of action, a climax, fall of action. There's a storyline, there are characters, there's setting, there's dialogue, there's all of the points of a story. And so for me, when I look at even a big verse or a Nas verse, the storytelling in it is what I get with it in terms of being housed in the English department in a College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. And so that's where I approach it from the literary aspects of it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So not only do you teach at A&T, but you actually went to A&T. What led you to choose A&T as a college?
Oh, man, I flunked out of Campbell University, or was flunking out, to be honest. I first went to school at Campbell University. Was not a good fit for me. Once again, as a guy that was born and bred in Project Statesville, North Carolina, going out there to Bowie's Creek and dealing with the good folk was not a good mix with me. I never forget, man, I happened to be hanging out with some basketball players from Campbell, and one of the dudes had a cousin who played basketball at A&T, and he was coming to Aggie Fest. I forget what year, it must have been like 87 or something like that. And was like, man, y'all want to ride? He had a station wagon. I straight, along with 3 or 4 of my friends, piled up in the station wagon. We came to A&T. I think that was April. And I looked around and was like, yeah. I had no idea about A&T as a university. My guidance counselor, although I did very well in high school, my guidance counselor had never talked to me about an HBCU. Not even with Winston State being some 40 minutes up the road, and what is it in Charlotte? Johnson C. Smith in Charlotte, another 30, 40 minutes up the road from Statesville. Never talked to me about Black colleges. And I came to A&T's Aggie Fest, man, and looked around and started talking to folk, man, and folk like, man, I'm an engineering major and I'm a nursing major, and I was like, wow, it's like a whole school of y'all. And so, man, I told my mama, man, I called her, man, that weekend when I came home, was like, yo, I'm transferring to A&T. And she was like, what about your scholarship? Because I had a little academic scholarship, not a full ride to Campbell, but they were giving me some money. And I straight told her, I don't think they're going to give me that money again next year, because I was well aware of what my grades were looking like. That's when they used to mail the grades to you and you could intercept them. Now it's a little harder to do that with the digital stuff. Yes, so man, I transferred, man. I found out that it was at the time $799 to be a full-time student in a semester.
Wow.
And off campus. And man, a friend of mine who was from my hometown was a student at A&T, and he was moving off campus. Just so happened that same summer. And he was like, yo, transfer to A&T, we get an apartment. And I was like, well, $799 plus apartment. I figure I can, make that money, with at least a little job. Got a job at UPS, and I've been in Greensboro ever since.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How did A&T, how did your development develop at A&T, and how did it help you become a man and as a professor?
I think Black excellence was expected of us, man. I had professors who back in the day would lock the door at the top of the hour. So if you didn't get in class right on time, you wasn't getting in class.
Wow.
There were professors who it was the first time that I saw Black scholarship, Black academics, and recognize that that your brain, which is something that I had been blessed with. I'd always done well in school. I enjoyed school growing up. I didn't set out to be an educator. I actually went to school to be a medical doctor, and ran right into calculus and realized that I didn't know doctors had to take all this math. And so I never forget, man, going to my advisor, and he was like, yo, what you like to do? I said, read. And he looked up the English major, and it had algebra 2. And I was like, dude, I got algebra 2. And that was it. And so when I came to A&T, I knew I was an English major. I signed up to the English department, man. And there were professors, man, Dr. Sandra Alexander, man, Dr. Elon Cooley, Dr. Jimmy Williams, who were older Black higher academic professionals who took a real interest in me, and I think saw some academic ability, and to their credit, didn't allow me to mess it up, no matter how hard I tried. There was a Dr. McLaughlin, man, who was a guy in the history department who at the time was advisor of the Black History Club. Man, I joined the Black History Club, learned more stuff about Black excellence, and man, it just shaped the person that I became and the person that I am. I tell folk all the time, man, if I hadn't come to A&T, there's no telling how my life would have transpired. A&T literally saved my life. And if you were alive in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a lot of stuff that a Black man could have got into that was not going to be prosperous for them. And I was on the cusp for a lot of that time of getting involved in that stuff, man. It was A&T. Even when I wasn't, as good of a student, I always did well. I would take 5 classes and drop 3, but I would get 2 A's just because I liked, being in school. I liked the environment, man. And like I said, I had people who pushed me and prodded, sometimes kicked me. I had a professor one time call me out in the hallway and talk to me about being lazy. She straight called me academically lazy. She said it had nothing to do with your intelligence. You're just academically lazy. I can tell you do this stuff the night before, and you get B's and you good with that. And it was the first time that I had somebody say, why would you be cool with a B? And I was like, I did it the night before, so I'm happy with a B. You're right. And she was like, well, put some work into it and get A's.
Wow.
And that's what I endeavored to do, man. But it was folk like that, man, who not only instructed you, but instructed you in the subject matter, but in life as well. And those were the lessons that I think made me who I am, man. Dr. McLaughlin looked at me in class one time and made the whole class look back at me and was like, look at little fella back there. He got a little glow about him. I don't know what he gonna do with it, but he got a glow. And man, he became my dude from that point forward, even though rest in peace, Dr. McLaughlin, even though he wasn't a professor in the English department, he was in history, but he became, like a pseudo mentor for me, man. Somebody who I watched, even when he didn't know I was watching me. I'm sure he kind of figured out why I was always hanging out at his history department office as an English major. But but you could make those kind of relationships. The professors and the staff at A&T, man, didn't just treat you at that time as a number, as just one of a student, man. They really cared about you as a human. And I think, man, that helped me moving forward, man, how I deal with students to this day.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That actually leads into my next question, which is actually a two-part question, was how did you use the mentorship and the care that your professors gave to you when you're in college, and how do you use that currently with the students you've had throughout your career? And then the second part question would be learning about that Black history and that Black excellence. Do you believe that's talked about enough in rap, in hip hop today?
Well, I'll take first question first. One of the things I've always mentored students. I became the advisor of the Black History Club for a couple of years at A&T. I'm now the coach of the Honda Campus All-Star Challenge team, which is a Quiz Bowl style team. And I mentor young people. Man, I always try to find a freshman and carry him or her through her 4 or 5 years, however long it takes them to graduate. And at the end of that time, I always share with them something that my mentor said to me. And then I was thanking him for working with me and making sure I graduated. And he said, just remember to do that for the next Aggie. And that's what I always tell my students. Like, if I do something for you, you don't have to return that favor to me. You return that favor to the next young person that's coming behind you. And that way we keep this thing rolling. We keep this chain going. So that's one of the things, man, with my mentorship. I always tell my mentees, it's never over. Like, I have students, man, I'm lucky enough to be at A&T since 2002. And I have students now that have long since graduated. And several of them, I think I could go so far as to call them my friends at this point, even though they're grown with families of their own and, real jobs and all that stuff. They still email me or talk to me or call me out of the blue and just, ask me a question about this, that, the third. And that's what I think, man, for me, because that's what the folk did for me at A&T. It wasn't about this semester, this year, until you graduate. It was a lifetime commitment from them looking out for me. And so I try to do the same thing with my students, man, and my mentees. I try to make sure that they know, like, yo, once I got you, I got you. And this don't stop when you graduate, or even if you transfer schools or drop out or do whatever. We're going to be connected as long as you allow that connection to remain intact. And I've tried to hold up to that, man, my time here at A&T. In terms of Black excellence in hip hop, I always tell folk, man, when you get mad at hip hop, say commercial hip hop, say commercial radio, because it's not the whole culture, it's not the whole genre. This is what you hear on the radio. And if you understand how commercial radio works, as I'm sure you do, it's all about advertising dollars, which is why the same 15 songs get played all day. They hot on the charts. Some Yahoo in some room says, let's run those, and calls McDonald's, and next thing you know, you get some money. But there is that Black excellence in hip hop still. You're just not gonna find it a lot on commercial radio. I mean, we still got Kendrick Lamar, and we got Rhapsody, we got J. Cole, who would just be 3 off the top of my head, who do the commercial thing and are very successful, and give you something to chew on mentally. But they're few and far between. But that's always been hip hop. I mean, I always talk to my kids, man, like my students, like we listen to Rappers Delight in my class, which in its original rendition is 14 minutes of pure gibberish. Like, there's no change the world raps in Rappers Delight. We get the message right after that. But then we get Basketball by Curtis Blow. I mean, hip hop is always, particularly on the commercial side. And that's just music in general. Like, folk are still making Bob Dylan type rock and roll records. You're just not going to hear them on the radio. There was a time when you would hear Bob Dylan style records on the radio.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and I mean, like, jazz is not the jazz of John Coltrane and Miles Davis.
No,
I mean, it's so things, when we talk about commercial says make money. And making money artistically has always been about appealing to the base, the lower registry of humans. Like, if you look at somebody like I had mentioned earlier, Jean-Michel Basquiat, who I was just reading the other day, one of his paintings just sold for something like $46 million, which is amazing. But this is a dude who during life maybe made $200,000 in the 26, 27 years that he was alive, maybe made $200,000 or $300,000. But now his paintings are worth millions. but you don't be a visual artist if you're looking to get paid. And the visual artists who get paid are the ones that make the billboards for Coca-Cola and McDonald's in them. I mean, you see what I'm saying? So hip hop is the same. Rock and roll is the same. Like gospel, you don't hear that old time gospel that you were hearing in your church on the radio no more.
True.
Because there's commercial gospel now. It's meant for folk like me who don't go to church often to get a vibe off of. It's not made for the 100-room church with Sister Sally, directing the choir. But that's where gospel music used to be, because that's what's all gospel music.
Yeah.
You go back and listen to those Reverend James Cleveland tapes and those joints, that's real preaching gospel.
True.
The gospel that you hear on the radio now, that's music. It's meant to make money.
Yeah. The one thing about gospel, and I was going to bring it up too, because someone who's a hip hop historian, it seemed to me like that gospel rap for a long time was like pushed back against those radio stations. So what are your thoughts on gospel rap being pushed back for so long, and now we're seeing the results of gospel rap being played on the radio? I mean, the push is crazy.
Hey, Brother McKain, it's funny if you live long enough to see stuff turn around. Old folks used to say that all the time, boy, I'd have been your age. And the older I get, the better I understand that. And, they're simply saying I've seen some things. So I think, man, that gospel has gone the same way as the rest of the culture. Like when I was an undergraduate student, if I didn't want to go to church, I just didn't bring home my church shoes. I never forget saying to my mama, all I got is these sneakers, because I had come home to Statesville for a weekend and I didn't bring church clothes because I didn't want to go to church. I was 19, 20 years old. Not many 19, 20-year-olds want to go to church with their mama. So I knew how to get out of it. I said, yo, I forgot my church shoes. And she was like, boy, you can't wear those in church. Well, now you can wear Jordans in church. Yeah. You can wear Timberlands in church. So if you can wear Jordans and Timberlands in church, you dang sure going to accept gospel rap.
Exactly.
I mean, I think that hip hop has become so ubiquitous in our society now, man. Like, we don't even see it now. And I try to tell these young folk all the time who've always had hip hop in their lives, that this is really interesting for me, to be almost 52 years old and seeing what's going on now. It's very interesting to me, seeing where hip hop was and how it was this little outcast, little musical genre that only a few anointed folk to stick with the church theme knew about and appreciated. To now, you can't go nowhere without hip hop. You're not gonna be able to watch a movie now without some hip hop music in it somewhere.
Wow.
Most TV shows worth their salt, if they're attracting younger viewers, there's gonna be some hip hop in it somewhere. And I think the church and gospel music have been forced to adapt. Because many of the preachers and the church deacons and stuff, they my age, and
they grew up listening to it.
They grew up listening to it. I mean, so when they hear breakbeat, they don't automatically hear drug and violence. They hear a hot beat, and I think that the church has realized that they were losing a lot of young people because of that very stringent stance against popular things, with hip hop being one. But I think they recognize now that, hip hop is grown up, for lack of a better term. There's always been these, I tell folk all the time that hip hop to me is a mansion. It's got a lot of rooms in that mansion. Unfortunately, it appears that commercial radio spends a lot of time in the bathroom or the bedroom.
Wow.
They don't spend a lot of time in the library, but there's that room is still in hip hop. There's some librarian rappers out here right now. There's still some religious, there's an altar in that mansion, and hip hop there's hip hop in that room too. But it's just like when people talk about, what's wrong with hip hop, it's like the drugs, the sex, the violence, those images, and it's there and it's problematic. The misogyny, the sexism, the homophobia, the all that stuff, it's there. It's a problem. But those things also exist in the greater society. I think that oftentimes hip hop is scapegoated for whatever's bad. Like, These kids need to stop killing themselves. Well, it's the music that they're listening to.
Nah,
Well, what about poverty?
it's deeper issues.
What about mass incarceration? I mean, what about the fact that their drugs are really available in some communities than they are in others? There's a lot of stuff going on, and it ain't just the music. Now, if you want to say the music ain't making it no better, I can go with that. I would have to throw my hands up and say, well, yeah, you're right. It's not making it any better. But the music didn't create it, because I remember growing up in the projects before there was hip hop, and there were still fights. There were stabbings and shootings, and those jokers was listening to Curtis Mayfield. There was still drugs being sold. There was still all that stuff that we get mad about hip hop existed before hip hop.
Did you have a song called Pusher Man though?
Yeah, he had a whole album. He did a Superfly album.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, man, I was watching. I always reference popular culture to try to make points with my students, and I'll do the same here. If you watched American Gangster, with Denzel Washington, the Frank Lucas story, well, that dude was a kingpin selling heroin in Harlem, getting it shipped from Vietnam, and that was 1969, 1970.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't no hip hop, but there was evidently still a drug trade. There was evidently still drug kingpins way before hip hop. Gangs been existing. There's a movie, Gangs in New York, that's set in the 1800s. So the gangs, you can't blame gang activity on hip hop. Tookie Williams and them started Grape Street Crips in the 70s. That was no hip hop. Hip hop didn't do that. Now, once again, hip hop has maybe thrown gasoline on an already burning fire. Yeah. And we can say that. I think the disrespect of women, but hip hop didn't invent, negative words about women. Those words been around before hip hop uttered its first verse. Absolutely. Unfortunately, hip hop didn't invent homophobia. Mm-hmm. Hip hop didn't invent keep up with the Joneses, get your money. The Rockefellers and them, we got in North Carolina, the Biltmore states. The Vanderbilts were no friend to poor people. This idea of get as much money as you can is a capitalism thing. Hip hop didn't invent that. Hip hop didn't invent the inner city, the hood. There's unfortunately always been hoods. W.E.B. Du Bois wrote a book, Souls of Black Folk. And he has an essay about South Philadelphia. And in that essay, he talks about the South side of Philadelphia as being high crime, horrible in terms of city services, no garbage pickup, poor schools, the same stuff that's happening in inner city neighborhoods today. Yeah, on the South side of town.
Yeah, the one thing about hip hop, and you explained it perfectly. You said that hip hop, it just is an expression of one's lifestyle, expression of beliefs, systems or whatever. But like you said, hip hop is a mansion and you have different sections in it. And so while you will have certain things that might glorify, the drug game or whatever, you also had the librarian rap artist. Like, in my opinion, the greatest librarian rap artist might be KRS-One.
Yes, sir. The teacher.
You know what I mean? The legend. He might.
Sir.
So you got, and they had the song, I think he had a song with, it was him, LL Cool J, Queen Latifah. I think it was called Heal Yourself. Is that correct?
Heal. Yeah, and it was an acronym, HEAL. I forget what it actually meant. But yeah. And KRS-One did what he called edutainment. So that he was trying to educate and entertain. And that's doable, I think, through the vehicle of hip hop. I mean, but once again, I blame that on the audience. On us. I say it all the time, man. Like, if Talib Kweli sold as much records as Jay-Z, then it'd be 1,000 Talib Kweli's. Wow. I mean, for real, like why don't that librarian rap sell? Yeah. I mean, people don't buy it in the same way they buy the murder, death, kill stuff. And if you're, I tell my students, man, I don't make a lot of money. I'm not poor by any stretch. I'm not a wealthy man, and I'm cool with that. You don't become an educator and seek to be wealthy. That would be lying to yourself. I'm good with that. But everybody needs money. Like, as Jeezy said, Georgia Power ain't trying to give a lights free. I mean, you know what I mean? Like we all need money. And if I tell my students, if, some music mogul, Clive Davis or Jimmy Iovine or somebody came into my classroom and was like, yo, Turman, I got $1 million right here, but I need you to do a murder, death, kill hip hop record. I'm liable to kill everybody in the classroom on the record. I mean, because $1 million buys land, buys stock, sets up trust funds for my kids. $1 million is $1 million. And so if somebody like me would have to make that calculus in a capitalist society, what is it for some, poor kid with a horrible family situation in some inner city USA who has the gift of gab, is able to put words together in a way that's entertaining to people? What happens when he's looking at the climate and he says, dang, I could be a librarian rapper, or I could talk this murder, death, kill stuff and get some money. In a capitalist society, it's hard, to rest on a moral fabric when you're hungry. Nobody has morals that's starving. That's a difficult thing to ask for in a capitalist society. And so I try to, keep that in mind. I think that the corporations, for whatever reason, man, Black pain and suffering is marketable in sales. And we could get into a million different reasons that seems to be the case in our society. Yeah. Why is it that corporations seem to support artists who do the murder, death, kill, get high, disrespect women, hip hop? There are other artists out here that are not doing that. Why don't they get, as the young people say, the bag? Why aren't these record labels signing those artists? I mean, I think it's much deeper than just the culture. I think, once we throw in these other factors that affect everything else, man, like, shoot, why does, the oil companies lower and raise their amount of oil production, thusly creating gas prices on my end that fluctuate? Why don't they just get all the dang oil out the ground and let us get some gas? Why come it can't be 79 cents again? Well, because they figured out supply and demand. If supply is low and demand is high, then price is high. So if you got the nozzle on the oil pump, then you produce as much or as little oil as you want in order to drive up price. Why is it that oil and gas goes up when spring comes? Well, because demand is higher then, because people are driving and going on vacations and spring break and yada, 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 yada. And this time of year, gas prices always seem to go up. During the winter, people not driving around a lot, gas prices always seem to be lower. That's capitalism.
Yeah. But the beautiful thing about capitalism is that, especially in American society, there is, of course, we have the lower class, we have the upper class, but we also have a middle class. And there can be a lot of rappers, and I think, and I would say, you could say he's a millionaire. I'm not sure, but D1 is probably an example of
D1. Yeah, my man. Yeah, I had him in my class. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's amazing. Yeah. D1 is probably somebody who kind of like was somebody who could fit in like both lanes, but wasn't too radical either way, and he kind of stuck with his moral fiber. So it's possible for a rapper to do that, but it is much harder for a rapper.
So, well, D1 also has a college degree and was teaching middle school when he started rhyming for money.
Yes,
so he wasn't hungry.
No, sir.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, he wasn't rich, but he wasn't hungry either.
Facts.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? So he's a special case, man. I love the brother. And I think that you can do it. I'm for sure, man. Like, man, one of my, I guess, best rap industry friends is Ninth Wonder. And man, Ninth, I remember, man, when I first met the dude, man, 10, 15 years ago, that he straight up has had dozens of offers to move to California or Atlanta or New York or Miami and make beats. And he's done the calculus. I can live right here in North Carolina. I might not make Pharrell money, but I don't need Pharrell money to be comfortable in North Carolina.
Wow.
I mean, he does very well for himself financially. I mean, Ninth ain't broke, but he's figured out that calculus. And I think but you got to carve a lane, and that's harder.
Yeah, it is harder.
It's clearly harder. But I think folk like Ninth, D1, I think Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole is a great example, are both great examples of that. Like, you don't have to play these games. You better be damn good, though.
Facts.
You better be good because, you don't have to be good to get on the radio.
Wow.
I mean, that's something that we know for sure. And it's always been the case. People my age get this nostalgic, I always say it's like looking back on high school. When you're in high school, it's the worst. But when you leave high school, you're like, man, I had a bunch of fun in high school, man. You forget, the dude that used to bully you in ninth grade. You forget, the crab teachers. You just remember the good stuff. And when people my age think about hip hop, they're like, man, I wish it was like it was. Big Daddy Kane. And I'm always like, yeah, Big Daddy Kane, MC Hammer. Ain't nobody never said Hammer was no top 5 rapper, but he has one of the top 5 highest selling rap albums.
Yeah. MC Hammer was an interesting case.
He's an entertainer. Vanilla Ice.
Yeah.
Vanilla Ice.
Yeah.
People always want to say Big Daddy Kane, Tribe Called Quest, man. We had Wu-Tang, we had Nas. I'm like, yeah. We also had Tone Loc. We also had Coolio. Let's be clear. Let's not forget.
I like Coolio. I ain't going front.
Man, I like them all. My point is, these dudes aren't great rappers. Young MC, Bust a Move. If I hear that right now, I'm gonna be like, "Do you want it? Ooh. You got it." But Young MC ain't Young MC.
Or what do you think Father MC? What do you think of Father MC?
Father MC, man, Father MC. He ushered in that whole, hip hop R&B vibe, which became the New Jack Swing, which became Chris Brown, as far as I'm concerned. But what nobody calling these cats, man, the greatest MCs ever. Like, if you ask people, let me get your top 30 MCs. By the time they get the Father MC, man, you might find, if you find 2 people that put Father MC in your top 30, then they probably kin to him. I mean, straight up. I mean, because, some of those cats wouldn't, and the only point is, it's just we had more diversity.
I feel it.
That's the one thing that I think, when I think about and talk to people who work in commercial radio, that's my beef with them. It's not that they play the murder, death, kill stuff. It's that they play only the murder, death, kill, get high, disrespect women stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But back in the day, man, if you think about it, shoot, man, I remember like 1995. If you look at the Billboard's rap 100 Hot 100 list in 1995, man, you're gonna find everybody from Pac to dang Big. Jay had just dropped Reasonable Doubts in 96, I think that is. So we say 96. Jay, Nas, Pac, Tribe Called Quest, Wu-Tang. You got, but there's diversity all over the place. And that's what we used to get. Yeah. Now, it's like I hear the same stuff all the time. Different artists, same vibe, same phraseology. It used to be, it seems to me that record labels used to sign if you were good. Right. Like you had to earn a recording contract. Now it's like, well, can we market you? Right. Yeah. And I don't know if you ever seen the Robert Townsend movie, The 5 Heartbeats. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's like it was so prophetic in that film in a lot of ways, I think, man. But you remember at the end, the dude's like, we rap country and western. Like they had found a gimmick. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and this gimmick gonna get us on. You know what I'm saying? That's how we try to do. Just get on. And I think that's what it is now. That it's just, if I can sell this stuff, are the kids into it? Okay, they like that beat. Boom. Forget what he's saying. Run that. And then you got somebody over here that's saying some library rap, or even talking about just living your life right. I find it, man. I think that's why a lot of these MCs aren't rapping about their truths. Like it used to be, if a cat got on the mic and he was talking about murdering, and he probably had him a few charges at some point. Like for real. Yeah. If he was talking about selling a bunch of dope, he probably had sold dope before. Like he's talking his truth, as you said earlier. Now, man, these cats, I have some of my college students, and they'll try to get into the industry and they'll bring me their music and I'll play it. And I'm looking at this kid, man. I'm like, dude, like, you've been in my class all semester. I happen to know in conversation you got both parents at home, that you from, a good side of town. Both of your parents got college degrees. And why are you on here talking about guns? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like what's good with that? I like stories.
Yeah.
And I think the best storytellers, man, are people who tell true stories and put that, as Kanye West called it, that liaries on it, put that little seasoning on it. That no good story is 100% true. My dad used to tell some of the best stories. They were not 100% true. My daddy go telling war stories and about how he done killed 30 Vietnamese. He might have killed 3 of them. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna say he wasn't over there getting shot at, but he got that thing on it. You know what I'm saying? He put a little season on it. It's a little bit, not too much to make it unbelievable, but a little bit. A little bit like you say, old folks, you say, they walked uphill to school 5 miles both ways. You know what I'm saying?
I feel you.
And now though, man, I think that we so far in, man, I think once again, these kids looking at it, man, and if you look at the backstories of a lot of these MCs, you find that many of them didn't really live the life that they became. Like, I think it's crazy that a lot of these rappers have their first bouts with the justice system after they become rappers.
Yeah.
Like, that's atrocious to me.
Yeah.
Because you would think you're doing it to get out of that. Like Biggie, in a lot of his rhymes, he talks about, selling dope, but he talks about it as a means to an end. And how, he's going to try to stop doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's what the dope rap used to be about.
Right.
Like, I had to do this stuff. I know it's not good. I hope that this rap thing works for me so I no longer have to do it. Not, I'm going to use this rap stuff to make people think I do these things that I don't really do.
Yeah, they're not only selling it, they're taking it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that's wild to me.
Yeah, man, it's bananas. And I think that's part of the problem, man. Because youth are looking up to these folk, man. We live in a society where with the social media and how there's so much access to information now that that these kids, man, are looking up to this stuff, man, and that's problematic to me.
It is,
particularly because they're looking up to folk who oftentimes aren't about the lives that they're rapping about.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like I found out a couple of years ago through a Future, who's an MC from Atlanta, raps. A lot of his early music is about being intoxicated in one way or the other, drugs, alcohol, you name it. And he doesn't even do it anymore himself, which I found to be, not to say, hey, go get high. I wouldn't say that, but it's like, dang, man, but you got a whole catalog that talks about, being intoxicated and you're sober. Like, and I'm sure he would say to me, well, yeah, Turman, but that's what sells. And ultimately, if you're a singer, if you're a dancer, if you're a painter, if you're an actress, if you're any kind of actor, you or artist, you ultimately want to be paid just doing your art. People that dance, that took dance classes since they was 5, and they might be working some other job right now. But if you ask them, would you rather dance for a check? Yeah, because you'd rather get paid doing something you love.
Yeah.
I mean, I tell students all the time, man, like, I'm one of the few cats, perhaps, that actually love what they do. Like I've always been comfortable in the classroom. I've always liked education, even though I grew up in the projects with a single mom and all that business. But I've always liked school. Like, that's my thing. And if I won, if I hit $200 million in the lottery tomorrow, I'll still be teaching at A&T.
Wow.
Just because I love it. I mean, I enjoy getting up in the morning, and man, this whole pandemic thing has been as hard on me as it's been the students, because I don't have that interaction that I've grown over the better part, almost 20 years now, of enjoying. So, anybody wants to be paid for what they like to do. And so I can understand, man, how rap artists find themselves in a predicament where, I can rap about this and really feed my soul and you know the community and do some good in the hood and be broke, or I can rap about this and get a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's hard for a poor man to not make to get a lot of money choice.
Yeah.
For me though, I think it's what you do after that. Like I said, if a record label offered me $1 million to make a murder, death, kill song, I'll make a murder, death, kill song, but I'm not going to take that $1 million and go buy no bunch of jewelry and no flashy cars. I'm going to go buy some land. I'm going to buy some trust funds. I'm going to go buy some stock. I'm going to go do some things where I'm not going to have to do that again.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that's where the disconnect becomes. But once again, I totally understand, man. I put more blame on the audience who supports particular kind of hip hop. There's a record that some students brought me that I happen to notice it gets spins on 1 or 2 jams called Throat Baby, which is about if you're aware of what one could do with one's throat sexually, then you know what it's about. And I'm like, wow. Like, I know that there are 1 million records being produced every day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
This is the one that you chose? Like, come on now. Like that's a little much for me. I mean, but once again, I'm sure they would say, well, that's what the people want to hear.
Is it?
And that's what I'm saying, Brother McKain. Is it? Or is that what you're giving them to hear?
Ooh. There was an entrepreneur. I forgot who he was. His point, he was saying, as long as we feed them what they want to hear, then that's what they'll buy. Not necessarily what they want. As long as we push this out, then they're gonna buy it. And I think that's where the trick comes in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I mean, it's there are people much more educated on it and perhaps more intelligent than I, who've written tons of books about how the system intends. Because as we talked earlier, one of the things about capitalism, I tell folk all the time, look here, there cannot be a war on poverty in a capitalist nation. Somebody got to be poor. It is what it is. It's capitalism. You got your poor and you got your wealthy. Now, we're lucky enough in America that you can go from poor to wealthy. In a lot of places where you're born, that's where you end up. We're lucky enough here to where you can go, like somebody like me, born and bred in the projects, can end up being able to feed their families and put 2 kids through college. That can happen here because of capitalism. And I understand that capitalism is one of the reasons that I'm able to do that. Got me? But I also understand that because capitalism needs a lower class in order to function, somebody got to be the consumer. If everybody had $1 million, who gonna pick up this trash? Who gonna sweep the streets? Who gonna change your linen in the hotel room? Who gonna cook your food in the restaurant? Like, you need an underclass. I think then the system makes it, over the years, has made it harder and harder for particular groups of people to climb that social ladder. And then once you start climbing it, there comes these other obstacles that you don't know about when you're all the way down at the bottom. Like even Hillary Clinton, who is not a poor person, but she's a female. And she talked about the glass ceiling and how that for a woman, Michelle Obama has discussed this as well, that there's a particular, you can have all the education, you can make the right moves, and then when it comes time to pick a CEO, they don't go with that dude over there. It's the reason that women outpopulate us in this country, but we've never had a female president. We've never had a female chancellor at A&T. And that's not because there are no qualified sisters. That's some other stuff.
Yeah, but it's changing. It's changing though. Society is definitely changing.
I think, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. Society is changing. I do think though that we also need to, just my personal opinion, we also need to elevate men as well. We gotta elevate the sisters. We gotta elevate women, but let's continue to elevate men, because I feel like also there is some men that are trying to figure out where their place is in society as well. But my next question to you is, who is the greatest hip hop artist of all time, and who is the greatest hip hop group of all time?
Oh man. Well, I get asked this a lot on panels and when I'm having discussions about hip hop because I'm the hip hop professor or whatever. and I'm going to preface all my comments with this. All of that is subjective.
Facts.
Like on a very real level, there's no way for us to quantify the greatest. It's not like, you can say Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player. Why? 6 MVPs, six national championships, won an NCAA championship as a college basketball player, one college player of the year, has won NBA all defensive team, all-star game, dunk contest. Like you can win it, and then somebody can be like, well, what about Kareem? Well, you can still go. You can go to the stats though, but you can go to the stats and have an argument.
Right.
When we're talking about hip hop, you can't do that because there's no way in the world to compare Jay-Z to Big Daddy Kane or the Pac because
they were part of the same. I mean,
Well, because so I'm gonna say that for me.
Yes, for you.
For me, Jay-Z is the GOAT. And one of the reasons I say that is because this man, for almost 30 years, has been relevant in a culture that normally chews you up and spits you out in 2 or 3. And this man has dropped records consistently. And that's part of coming around at the right age. Like you look at Big Daddy Kane, Big, I think if Big would have lived, we probably don't hear Jay like we hear him because he couldn't have been king of Brooklyn with Biggie around. And if he wasn't king of Brooklyn, then he couldn't be king of New York. And if he wasn't king of New York, then he could never been king of hip hop. So I think Big's death catapulted Jay up the ladder. Pac, I think, had he lived longer, perhaps would have. There was no telling where Pac was going, the skyrocket that his career was on. No telling where he would be if he would have lived as long as Jay-Z. He would have been Will Smith before Will Smith. Yeah, for sure. With an edge. Will Smith with an edge. Which would have been very interesting to see. But so I think, man, for me, Jay-Z, man, I think, man, just his rhyming ability, I think, regardless of like him or not, politics or whatever else he's doing, his rhyming ability, I think, is top notch. I think the other thing that Jay-Z's been able to do for almost 30 years is he really has an ear for hot producers. Like if you go through his catalog, particularly from 96 to 2008, 9, something like that, whatever the hot producer was, Jay-Z had a beat. Pharrell, Kanye, Swiss, No ID, Rottweiler. Like you go through them, Timberland. Like you go through them, Jay-Z was able to hear and say, hey, that person right there got something. Let me work with him. I think that's for me why Nas, who I think is a much better lyricist than Jay-Z.
Oh, facts.
I don't think that it's hard to stomach some of those Nas albums once you get past Stillmatic, Godson maybe, but sometimes his beat picking is just not, like you listen to Nas album, it's like having a conversation with him all day. Like, it's you want to nod your head at some point. The lyrics are never the problem, but beat wise. So for me, man, I think Jay-Z, man, is just the GOAT, man. And for me, in terms of group, man, I'm a Southern dude, man. So I got to say Outkast. For me, man, the cast, man. What they were able to do, man, coming from Atlanta when they came, man, like people forget, man, that players ball. All the players come from miles around. That was a Christmas record. That was on a very LaFace Christmas.
Wow.
It's a Christmas song. And if you listen to it, you hear the jingle bells at the beginning. The stuff that they're talking about, it's beginning to look a lot like what? Follow your every step. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. It's a Christmas record. That's just how phenomenally talented these dudes were. They were asked or forced by Babyface to give a record to LaFace, a very LaFace Christmas, which is the name of the Christmas album that LaFace Records did. And they gave them that. Players Anthem. Phenomenal work. The whole way that they understood the South was important and needed a voice.
Facts.
I think for me is very, very, very important, man. Now we had, Ghetto Boys, 8 Ball, MJG, and we had some groups before Cast, that Goody Mo B, that right around there with Cast and them. But Outkast, I think, embodied what it meant to be cool with not being from New York, cool with being Southern. I never forget seeing the music video for Cadillac Funky Music. Southern players hit Cadillac Funky Music. And when I think it was Dre 3000, when he got up from the table and he had on like a loose wife beater, you could tell it was like, I don't know, he got a big brother or something. You don't wear his big brother wife beater. I used to wear my big brother wife beaters, and they used to be loose all around the arm. And I saw that and I was like, man, these dudes is good with being country. What in the world, man? Like this is what's up. So I think that they made it okay to be Southern in hip hop, and to be your authentic Southern self. Once again, Ghetto Boys had done it for Houston, and they made full clear, yo, we from Houston, Texas. UGK, Underground Kings, Bun B. They made it okay to be from Texas, but I think Cass made it okay to be Southern in a way that none of those other cats. I mean, even with the drawl, the talk, the walk, they just made it okay then. So for me, Cass, man, if I had a Wu-Tang, I think is a very important group. Tribe Called Quest, I think very important group, man, as well. Run DMC, you can't get around what they did. Even groups like Houdini. I was listening to, I was talking to some of my students the other week, and they were talking about, and one of my students said, man, Drake, man, invented that sing stuff in hip hop. I was like, dude, man, go back and listen to Houdini. One love. You're lucky just to have just one love. We've been doing that a long time, man. Like Drake ain't invent that stuff.
I mean, shoot, Bobby Brown was rapping.
Bobby Brown rapping and singing. If there's no Chris Brown without Bobby Brown. Hell, I might even go so far as say there's no R. Kelly without Bobby Brown. Woo. I mean, because Bobby Brown, as you said, he was the one to bring that hip hop sensibility to R&B.
Yeah,
and do it well. So you could throw Guy in. There's a lot of groups that came after that in that vein. But Bobby Brown, that I never forget My Prerogative video and every little step you taking. Just seeing the edge. He had the Gumby haircut. I had the Gumby back then.
Oh wow!
So yeah, I had the Gumby.
Okay.
But yeah. So I think, man, Tribe Called Quest, Wu-Tang, Run DMC, Cass, though, for me as a Southern cat, they've done it for me, man. But once again, man, all that stuff is subjective. I mean, because it's not like a sport, because you can't use record numbers. Because if I'm old enough to remember where particularly rap artists, if not all artists, were trying to go gold, 500,000. Like if you could sell 500,000 records, that was a good run.
Right.
So Big Daddy Kane and them, they wasn't even trying to sell 1 million records. So when you look at their numbers and you see 120 something thousand, 200,000, that was big back then.
Right.
200,000. You sell 200,000 records right now, you getting dropped from your record label.
Wow.
Like for real, because they gonna see that as a failure.
That's crazy.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Because now, like Drake.
Numbers. Yeah, it's saturated. It's like, I mean, it's like movies. It's like the one thing about it, and I might get on a little rant here, but like they didn't used to invest in Black movies, especially in the early 2000s. They used to say, well, people aren't going to watch Black movies, and they had these $10 million budgets, okay? And then when the Avengers hit, we saw $100 million budgets and everything is like that. But when Black Panther came out, we finally saw people would buy Black movies. And I don't want to get on around that, but I would just say that stuff like that, it just amazes me.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's true, man. But once again, we're talking big money here.
Yeah.
Because, back in, I don't know, 1988, they wasn't spending $100 million on movies.
No.
So they wasn't expecting to make $100 million. But now I think it's the same thing, man. It seems to go towards, I think, man, as a culture and as a people, that Black folk get lowballed.
Yeah.
In a variety of arenas. I mean, if you're not careful, you'll mess around. I tell my students all the time, like, yo, talk to your coworkers. Because you sitting there, going to lunch at McDonald's and your coworker going to Olive Garden and you trying to figure out how y'all doing the same job and this person eating a different lunch than you are. Well, you might find out that you done got lowballed on the way in the door.
Wow.
And as soon as you know that, the better you can then act. I tell my students that always advocate for yourself. So when you get that job offer and that salary offer, it's your job. They offer you $70,000. It's your job to write $80,000 on the paper and slide it back to them with a smile. That's your job. Now, if they give you $72,000, you got $2,000 more dollars than you were going to get. But you got to advocate for yourself. I think for our culture for a long time, man, has been almost conditioned to be thankful for what we get.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm just good. I'm just glad to have a job. And then you get a job and you realize, man, I don't think they're paying me like they're paying this person over here. Same degree, same experience.
Doing the same work.
Doing the exact same work. What's the difference? He went to Chapel Hill. I went to NCA&T. No. Well, you find out that the dude that went to Chapel Hill messed around and advocated for himself before he took that job. He messed around and negotiated moving expenses, negotiated cost of living increases, negotiated child care, did things on the way in.
Wow.
And so I always tell the students, and if you had a company, when it's time to promote somebody, who you going to promote? You can promote the person that advocated for themselves on the way in the door that knew their worth, or you can promote the person that took the first offer. Well, you might see the person who advocated for themselves and knew their worth as perhaps a better employee, perhaps a better supervisor, manager, district manager, regional manager, whatever.
Wow.
But you come through the door and you take that first offer, and I think that Black culture and Black folk have taken that first offer.
Yes,
I think far too often. I think now we're in peak game. That's one beautiful thing about us. Our history also suggests that we're gonna figure it out, and we have figured this America thing out. Coming from where we came from in under 500 years is amazing.
It is the success that we've had.
I mean, just the fact that you and I can sit in this space and have this kind of conversation in an open forum is amazing. Absolutely. To me. I mean, it shows that we're we're playing catch up, but we fast studies, and we tend to catch up quickly. Now the game may change again, but
we're gonna be ready for it,
and we'll adjust then too. I mean, and I think that now like my kids are much better equipped to deal with and understand how to navigate this world, man. And I think musically that oftentimes the artists are now learning a little bit more about what's really important, so that you got folk who realize you're not gonna be on the radio, you can hear me 1,000 times a day, or I might be able to just do 30, 40 shows for $20,000 each and still feed myself and have a very good life out here.
Absolutely.
And I think that a lot of artists, man, are making that decision, and it appears that people like Wiz Khalifa, I think is a great example of that. I'm coming from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is not a hip hop hotspot then or now, but realizing his worth. Like man, my daughter was in high school years ago, and they begged me to take her to a Wiz Khalifa concert. It happened to be spring break. It was on a Wednesday in the annex, Joel Coliseum annex. I've had a little knowledge of who Wiz Khalifa was at the time. He was this Pittsburgh dude. That's all I knew. And we went to the concert, and there was a line, which I was like, wow. And then I watched the arena fill up. And I realized, dude, this cat on a Wednesday night done put 9,000 or 10,000 people in here. We done paid $50 for our tickets. I don't know how much everybody else paid, but if you do $30 times 10,000, that's an all right night. It's Wednesday. I'm pretty sure you're gonna be somewhere Thursday, somewhere Friday, somewhere Saturday. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And I noticed after the concert that he had friends of his selling merchandise, and the kids were lined up to buy it. And he had this whole Taylor Gang thing that he was running at the time. And I was like, wow, how intelligent. And I haven't heard this dude on the radio. At the time, he didn't have a song on the radio.
Genius.
And I was like, wow, man, he has really figured it out. He's going to be able to do this forever, regardless of whether or not he gets on the radio. And I was talking all kind of academic stuff. My daughter, as a high school student, ain't want to hear, but I was just amazed at what I saw. And I think that a lot of cats have figured out that, particularly with the technology and your your ability to get access to the fans without having to go through the commercial routes. I think has made it to where, rappers can carve out rooms in this mansion, to carry on a metaphor, that they can stay in, and they can build their own little house. They can build a house behind a mansion and still be cool in that little space. I think somebody like Eminem, I think, still lives in that space. You rarely hear Eminem song on the radio, but Eminem could, if he did a concert tomorrow in the Greensboro Coliseum, it's gonna be sold out.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt about it. And he's not a commercial rapper. So I think that there are cats who have kind of figured that out. Now you got to be smart with your money,
right?
I think, and one of the things I noticed with Wiz Khalifa is his friends are selling the merchandise, which means he paid for the merchandise himself, which means he didn't take that show money and go blow it on a Bentley.
Wow.
He took it and reinvested it in himself. So you got to, and money management, I think, is something else that that as a people, we're just starting to understand. Like I've been knowing how to balance a checkbook, for a long time. My mama had a checkbook. I remember watching her fill in stuff at the back of the checkbook, doing her little budget and stuff. But she never really talked to me about, what this means. How important it is to save, how to save. And I think that's where, we're one of those catch-up moments.
Absolutely.
For us as a people. And I think that's reflected in some artists. But once again, the easy road is the easy road for a reason. It might get you somewhere fast, but you also might get dropped off quick.
Yeah, true.
You know what I'm saying?
That's a fact.
Because these artists that have these, like whoever it is, I don't even know the artist name that does this Throat Baby song. If he or she, I don't even know if it's a male or female. If he or she is around in 5 years, I'd be surprised. I ask my students all the time, like, think about, and these are undergraduate college students who are, generally 18 to 23 or 4 years old. And I say, like, think back to middle school and who your favorite rapper was.
Wow.
If he's not named Drake, he's probably not around.
Wow.
Because this is not a culture that lends itself easily to longevity.
You got to be like a Jay-Z to do something like that.
You got to be, the Kanye West.
Exactly. Billionaire.
You got to, yeah. And then because you have to be able to reinvest the money in yourself. Because it's very easy if you always depend on the record label. Once you get 30, then you're like an NFL running back.
That's crazy to me. 30 is so young. But
and 30 is not old in the real world.
Yeah.
But in the rap world, just like it is in sports, just like it is for NFL running back, 30, you're a dinosaur.
Well, to be honest with you, I'm kind of like I interview sports people. Actually, the average lifespan for running back is 3 years. So technically, an old running back is 26, 27.
Even crazier. Yeah. Crazy. Yeah, what's in a human's life, you still got over half your life left if you're lucky.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So your ability to be able to pivot and find other ways to sustain yourself. I think that the rappers who are able to have some longevity all have their own money.
Yeah.
They don't need the record label to produce their music. And if you depend on the record label, if you're just a worker, then you get fired. And once you get fired, then you go back, man. I heard a quote from she used to be like a video model, Melissa Ford. Used to be in the 90s. Used to be in a lot of music videos, particularly rap videos. She's a very, very attractive sister. And she said that after her stint as a video vixen ran out, she had a job as a real estate agent in New York, and she used to ride a train to work. And she said that people would always ask her, like, what you doing on the train? And, it's like early 2000s. Her run as a video vixen was long over by then. And she said the worst thing in the world is to be famous and broke. And I was like, wow, that has to be hard to handle. Yeah. Like, you walking down the street, everybody know your name, and you going to work just like me. That's got to be, and there are a ton, the entertainment industry, the street outs on the way out of the entertainment industry is littered with the bodies of people who are famous and broke.
Wow.
A lot of times we see these rappers or hear them on the radio, and we think that because he said he got a Maybach or he just spent $1 million on a chain, that one, he really did it, and two, it was really his or her money. And then they find out, the record label owned that Bentley, and that chain was leased to you by the jeweler because he wants you to advertise for him. As soon as your career over with, they gonna want their stuff back.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's what happens to folk like the Throat Baby song people, because if that's where you at with as an artist, that's a very base, a very low level of art. I tell folk all the time, man, like any other art, there's good hip hop and there's not so good hip hop. It's all art.
Yeah.
I mean, if I draw a stick figure, that's art.
True.
You don't expect it to be hanging on no gallery in the Met, though. I mean, so there's hip hop, there's high art, and there's low art. The low art is gonna come and go. You're gonna be out of here right quick. The high art, that's the stuff that people are gonna be listening to forever. Like, man, people still listen to Silent Night by the Temptations at Christmas.
Yes.
High art. That's high art. It don't matter, I wouldn't be surprised if they ain't got that thing on one of the discs that they send up in the space shuttle or shooting it out of space. Like aliens are gonna be aware of Silent Night by the Temptations if they ever show up. Wow. If they hadn't already. But Throat Baby gonna be gone next month.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, because that kind of stuff get hot for a minute, and then you're gone. Like, even, man, people who, like, I was looking at Megan Thee Stallion, and I think Megan Thee Stallion has put out some music that you can listen to, nod your head to. I mean, it ain't my cup of tea, but I understand why people like Megan Thee Stallion. She makes music that you bob your head with. That's we're not gonna be looking at Megan Thee Stallion to do that kind of music when she's 30. It's not gonna be so she's not attractive. Trina is still an attractive woman, but ain't nobody trying to see 40-year-old Trina talk about shaking her butt like we would 20-year-old Trina. I enjoyed 20-year-old Trina, looking at her and hearing her about her shake her butt. It was a beautiful thing. 40-year-old Trina, I'm not trying to see that. Not because she's not unattractive now, because she's an attractive woman still.
Absolutely.
But certain things you grow out of. Now this woman got kids, you got, for real. And so I think that, man, when you go to that base level of stuff, man, which is, once again, I think what's so phenomenal about folk like Jay-Z, Kanye, Nas, who've been doing it for a long time. They never started out there. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, Jay-Z got some songs where he talk about dope, where he talk about sex, where he talk about women, but that wasn't his thing. That hook is a very tenuous hook.
Yeah.
You can't stay there long. I mean, it's why, Lil' Kim running around here looking like a fragment of her former self.
Yeah. Foxy Brown is a perfect example. To me, Foxy Brown, her style and just her voice, her creativity, she could have definitely been somebody if she had been like a Queen Latifah. See, Queen Latifah was a positive style rapper. Foxy Brown, with that amount of skill that she had, if she had been positive like that, who knows what kind of influence she would have still had to this day.
Yeah, I think so, man. And a lot of artists get pigeonholed, I think, in that way. But I think oftentimes they do it to themselves. Like I'm cool with Foxy, Il Nana. Like, once again, enjoy the music, enjoy looking at her do it. But that whole album was like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like she had an opportunity to do other things.
Absolutely.
Musically. Perhaps she fell into the same trap of this is what the label want. This is what I need to produce. Maybe they were picking those songs for her album and leaving others off. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of what's the movie? Dreamgirls, where the Eddie Murphy character was trying to, do those change the world records And the record label was like,
nah, we ain't feeling
nah,
that.
bro. Now you James Thunder early, son. You know, you do the hip twist. That's what you do. Stick with that. And I think that happens a lot, man.
Yeah.
You know, that artists, and you know, it's got to be hard, you know, if your first record is Throat Baby and it hits.
Right.
You're gonna be tied to this thing for the rest of your life now. Because everywhere you go, like I read an article the other day about the tag team. I don't know if you've seen the Geico commercial. Scoop, there it is. Sprinkles.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Tag team, you know, they had the song Whoop, there it is.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so I read an article, man, about them and the commercial, the Geico commercial, and how it came together. And one of the members was saying that they always knew that they were always going to be tied to Whoop, there it is. Like it was like, man, the record got so big, you know, it was like we could come out and do some songs about guns. Wasn't nobody gonna buy that from us. Not the Whoop, there it is, guys. You know what I'm saying? So he was like, they realized that once the song wore out, that two things needed to happen. They needed to own it. They had to have some ownership of the record.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, it got so big, and then he was like, and we're gonna be able to sing this song until we die.
That's the way.
And I was like, you got to be cool with that. Like those dudes know they're always going to be tag team Whoop, there it is. Novelty record. Nobody's going to ever put them in a top 100 list of great MCs.
No.
But they live in Atlanta. They've evidently taken care of themselves and their families, and they're cool with it. I
like the song. I mean,
it's, you know, and everybody has bobbed their head to Whoop, there it is. It is what it is. You know, I know everything word to it. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But I think they were smart enough to figure that out. I think a lot of these rappers come in now and they get pigeonholed. And once that is over with, then they're left with nothing. You know, and that's the travesty for me, man. But at this point, you know, it's kind of like, you know, what came first, the chicken or the egg? You know, if you don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you don't understand that it's the music, I always tell my students, it's the music business. Like, you can't say one without the other.
Wow.
And if you're going to get into this, you need to understand not just the music, but the business. And if you don't understand both, then you're going to get screwed. I mean, and that, you know, because music business, I mean, shoot, man, we see there's a ton of movies about record labels screwing artists.
Yes.
All the way back to the 40s and 50s. Like, this thing just started happening with rap cats. Like, James Brown had to fight for his rights. Prince had to fight for his rights. He was running around here as a symbol behind a fight with the record label. Michael Jackson owns the Beatles records. The Beatles, Paul McCartney don't even own the Beatles records. Michael Jackson bought their catalog and is now part of his estate. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So if they do it to the Beatles,
they can do it to anybody.
What do you think they gonna do to MC, whoever you heard of from Charlotte? You better have your mind together, and you better read that paperwork, and you better have somebody who's around you who is very trustworthy, who understands business or legal language. If it's not an attorney, it needs to be somebody who understands how those words are written. Part of the second part, third part, and all that kind of stuff. You go to, but if somebody say, go to page 33, sign and date, and I'm gonna give you this $10,000 check. Well, whose fault is it if you go to page 33 and sign and date without reading it? It's hard to blame the people who told you to go to page 33 and sign and date for this $10,000 check if you didn't read the contract. And I think that's what happens, and it shouldn't be still happening now, because once again, man, Q-Tip, way long ago said industry rule number 4080, record company people are shady. That was in the 90s. If they were shady in the 90s, they definitely shady in 2021. Trust and believe. There's nothing that happened since 96 to make record company people not be shady.
Yeah.
I mean, so if you enter that industry now and you're not aware that you could easily, you know, catch yourself out there and sign a bad deal and end up broke and destitute after selling 1 million records. Like TLC sold millions of records and didn't have much to show for it after the fact, behind a bad contract. This stuff happens in the music industry. So I think that a lot of these cats do what they got to do, what they think they got to do to get on, have a record that's being played on the radio a lot, and then realize that, yeah, everybody know your name except for the banker, because you ain't got no money.
And that's the name that needs to know you.
That's who need to know you. That's who need to know you for sure. And forget, Bryon Turman knowing you. You'd be worried about, somebody with some money knowing you. But it's getting better. I mean, because once again, the name cats like Wiz Khalifa, and I think Kendrick Lamar has done a great job. J. Cole has done a great job, man. Ninth right here in North Carolina, done a great job of not only producing the art that they want, vis-a-vis hip hop music, but also being able to not be financially exploited.
100%. 100%. My last question to you is,
yes, sir,
what are your personal keys to success? What are some of the let's say you're one of your students asks you for advice. They finish your class, they finish your classes and everything. They say, "Professor, what do I need to do to become successful in life?" What would you tell them?
Hey man, I got 3 things, man, and much of this, man, came from my mama that I've remixed and sampled over the years. But 3 things I always tell students in that case: 3 D's. Discipline, and I don't mean discipline that somebody else is giving you. Self-discipline. You got to be disciplined in what you're doing. I once read the difference between an amateur and a professional is that a professional does it every day. That's what makes you a professional. He has discipline. You got to be able to do things all the time. Repetition, man. My son just got his first real job out of college, and is seeing a 40-hour work week for the first time in his life. And I was telling him, I was like, bro, this is the grind. This is now you see what it is, man. Like, every day, same thing. You got to have that discipline, though, to get up, to be there on time. You got to have discipline, man. You got to be dedicated. I mean, on a very real level, man, first to yourself, to whoever you call God and your family. You got to be dedicated, because you can't get anywhere without real serious dedication. And that dedication is what's going to allow you to get up every day and go to work. It's going to allow you to keep working that thing, allow you to start that business when everybody tell you you're not going to be able to do it. If you don't have no discipline, don't have no dedication, you're certainly not going to be successful. And the last D is determination. You got to be determined. You got to have discipline, you got to have dedication, and you got to be determined. And that determination is what's going to allow you to get up when you fail. I always tell my students, man, everybody fails. I don't care, Oprah Winfrey, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, William Buffett, you name them, they've failed. At some point in their life, they tried to do something that didn't work. But they were determined that they were going to be successful. So when they failed, they saw it as a lesson, they learned from it, and they got back up, and they kept going at it because they were disciplined and they had dedication. And if you got discipline and dedication and you throw some determination in there, you cannot not be successful. This is what you determine success. You say you want $1 million. Well, discipline, dedication, determination. Somewhere along the way, it's going to come together. Or you're going to realize you don't really want $1 million. You good with 300,000. You see what I'm saying? Because if you disciplined and you dedicated and you determined and you really go about that trying to get that $1 million, along the way, you're either going to get there or you're going to be successful in where you are. Like myself, I learned a long time ago, when I decided to be an educator, that's not a $1 million a year job. That's not, that's not a billionaire situation. But I'm gonna have a smile on my face every day. I'm gonna be able to feed myself and my family. I'm gonna be able to do relatively what I want to do because I don't want to do extravagant things. I don't do that to myself. I'm not sitting around here dreaming about taking a safari to Africa. I've looked into it. I know that's a lot of money. I'm good. I would love to do it, but I recognize that, I might do some other things now. I do a little writing as you already mentioned, I get some little side money, doing panels and little stuff, man. I got a book I'm writing right now, so I'm trying to do some things, maybe give me a little bit of money to go get that African safari. But I recognize that the game that I play isn't one that's likely conducive of me being able to just up and go do that. I can't just up and go to California if I want to, just because. I'm a Lakers fan. I would love to be able to go to 41 home Lakers games. I'm a Cowboys fan. I'd love to go to 8 home Cowboy games a year. I've been to 5. I'm good. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I go to the game they play in the Panthers, get in the whip, drive over there. I've been up to the Redskins stadium. I've been up to the Giants stadium. I mean, I'm able to go do some things. But I have discipline. I learned a long time ago that, as my mama back then beat into me, boy, you ought to get tired of these whoopings. And my mom used to say that to me all the time. Boy, you ought to get tired of this. When you gonna act right? Like, just do the stuff yourself so I don't have to do this to you. You gotta have your own discipline. Man, I'm somebody who, crazy as it might sound, man, I missed one day of school, K through 12. That wasn't for a doctor's appointment or something where I had to go do some family stuff. One day, and that was senior skip day. And at first it was because my mama had a job where, you couldn't be calling her at work if you got sick. So, it was some castor oil, some Vicks vapor rub up in your nose and go to school, boy. But then I liked school. So I liked to go. So I went. I mean, my mama, aside from, waking me up in the morning, once I got up, I was good to go to school. I ain't never argued to not go to school. I'm determined. I've had determination, man. My life has, not been an easy road. As I told you, man, I straight up messed up a partial scholarship at Campbell behind just screwing off. I mean, there's no other excuse. I tell students all the time, like, yo, I straight transferred to A&T on the wing of the prayer and had to go and get a hearing to be accepted because I was under a 2.0 GPA. Now I was I think I was number 5 in my high school class when I graduated. So I ain't never been no academic slouch, but I was at Campbell straight doing nothing. And my grades reflected it. But I was determined. And I remember, talking to the people in the admissions office and telling them that they're not going to make a mistake. That, that I'm going to graduate. For real. Like, y'all give me this chance, I'm going to make this thing happen. And I was dedicated. I've been dedicated to myself. I try to, I've made some mistakes in my life. Very real 11 people that know me well are aware of that. I'm a divorced man behind making some mistakes. I mean, it is what it is. But I've been dedicated to my family, my kids, who are both now college graduates. My son is a friend of mine, and I drew tears from my eyes in high school when he called me his best friend. I mean, and because he's seen that dedication. That's the other thing I tell students, like, dedication is something that you see. Discipline is something that you see. Determination is something that you see. You can't just say it. You see those works bear fruit. You see it. When you're really about this thing. You say you want to graduate, but you ain't been in class in 2 days. But then you don't want to graduate. You don't have the discipline, you don't have the dedication, and you don't have the determination. Because if you did, you wouldn't be missing class. So, your work is what tells me what I want to do this. Well, what are you doing every day? Have the discipline and do that every day. You want to be an accountant, but you don't like math. Stop lying to yourself. You're not going to be able to have discipline, determination, and dedication if you're lying to yourself. You got to go into veins where and once you go into it, if you don't like math and you want to be an accountant and you're really disciplined and you really are dedicated and you really have determination, then you in that accountant book every day. You in the library, you asking the professor questions. You working to achieve that goal, because faith without works ain't nothing. And you don't have to be no religious person to recognize that. That's just the truth of it. If you say you want something, but you're not working towards that thing, then you don't really want it. It just looks good. Because if you really want it, then you do the daily stuff. The grind is not as bad if you really want it. My son wants to get his own apartment. My ex-wife and I have told him, bro, we're not paying for that. You gotta work and save some bread. Now, If you're working and you're not saving bread, then you don't want to have a partner. Stop talking that stuff to me. Talk to me when you got $1,000. Talk to me when you've been saving some money and you're like, okay, now I got this. Let's go look at some more partners. And me and your mama are going to square those edges off real easy for you, bro. We'll hit you off with some stuff, but you got to show on your end that's what you're trying to do. Don't just talk that talk. Be disciplined, be dedicated, have some determination. If you do those three things, success cannot happen. There's no way you cannot be successful if you're disciplined, if you're dedicated, and you have some determination.
Man, I love it. That was amazing, Bryon. I really appreciate this conversation. Just love.
Man, thank you, brother. This
was amazing. This is deeper than hip hop. This was about community building.
Yes, sir.
This was about men like yourself, men and women like yourself, who are really developing the next generation. So I definitely want to applaud you and thank you for that very much, sir. And thank you for giving me a few moments of your time.
Hey, man, appreciate it, man. Enjoying the conversation, Brother McKain. Be safe, man.
Yes, sir. You as well.
All right. Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings.